Hello there, adoptive mamas and daddies. My name is Brooke Fremouw. I'm a certified trauma support specialist and an adoptive mom to 11 incredible, beautiful children. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about therapy. No, I am not a therapist. I definitely am not even almost in the wheelhouse of therapy. What I am is a trauma-informed care specialist. I am honed in and specialized specifically in the world of adoption. And today I want to share with you why therapy never helped calm my house. It started actually a long time ago. If I go back, I believe 15 years ago, I got my first tweenager. I love that word tween. Like, what is that? I got my first tween placed in our home. And when she was placed in our home, she was kind of a hot mess. To be honest with you, our home went from calm and stable. All of the trauma that this beautiful, innocent, undeserving of that child came into our home, and then our home turned into a lot of the crazy that she had experienced. It came with her, and instead of our stability neutralizing her instability started to bring instability into our home environment. Can you relate to that? And so, of course, what does the state do? They say, we need therapy. We need a behaviorist. We need a team to be able to stabilization team. We need her to be in counseling. We need games through a behavior coach that ultimately teach around relationships and conflict resolution. We need to onboard everything that we can find, including meds. And in doing that, she'll have the best chance of stability. And so I believed it. I bought in. And the longer my child was in therapy, the more consistency and love that we surrounded our children with, the more toxic the behaviors became. My family, they watched from the outside and they were like, ugh, phew. And then we had friends that were like, you should make her hold books out in her arms. And I'm thinking, have you ever tried to get a completely rebellious child to do anything you ask, let alone some kind of corporal punishment? Like, that's not going to work. The specialists, the social workers, the case managers, the therapists, you're doing everything right. You've got consistency. You've got the reward chart. You are showing up with love and patience and kindness, and you're not yelling. And eventually, all of these things that she's surrounded with are going to bring about neutral, and things are going to be okay. I did have a family specialist, is what the representative was called, from our agency. And at one point she came and she visited and she said, you know, Brooke, you've got younger kids in the home. They were substantially younger and they were not adopted yet. And she said, I'm worried that those placements are at risk because your house is so upside down and backwards. It was terrifying. To have somebody like an agency worker say, I don't know that you should keep moving forward with this. We had big decisions that needed to be made. I actually had a call with a client this morning where I was revisiting that and how difficult that really was to have to decide, what are we going to do in the face of these attitudes and behaviors? And the answer was there's no easy solution because everything that was around didn't work. Why? Do you have a kid in therapy? Is therapy changing the way that they show up in the household? Do you see evidence of onboarded skill sets that are actually being used, that are shifting the dynamics in your home? And this is what I would say to that. Is therapy good for our trauma kids? Usually, yes. Having the right therapist, a seasoned therapist that really understands attachment, that really understands neglect, abuse, abandonment, and can help them to process their experiences, look at them, reframe them, challenge the way in which they perceive relationships around them, challenge the ways in which they interpret the world around them, so that they can choose to try on different lenses. That is a long process. As an adult, have you ever been to therapy? If you have, you know that it's not an overnight process, right? Like, the process of therapy requires relationship, trust, vulnerability, the ability to be challenged, the ability to look at how you're being challenged and actually apply a different point of view and a perspective, and then to move through that, right? So knowing that as an adult, then what does that look like for our kids? It looks like a long haul that requires a lot of maturity and a lot of willingness over a course of time. And yet I know that in my case, I didn't have time. My home, my child, the behaviors were getting so extreme that safety was a fundamental concern. Safety both of the child itself that was bringing toxicity and safety around, what is this doing to everyone else? From there, my child ended up in residential treatment multiple times over again, and we did move forward with the adoption, and God protected our other children. And in that, I did learn a whole heck of a lot about the resilience of my other kids to walk in the face of those things. And yet, I said to myself, with every resource, respite, habilitation, psychology, psych meds, therapists, family therapy, individual therapy, behavior coaching, stabilization team, social workers, family specialists, right? We had like 11 people on the case, plus me and my husband. And with those 11 people, we couldn't find neutral. We couldn't undo the toxicity that was so deeply rooted. And I said to myself, what am I missing? Because I'm being told that what I'm doing is right, and yet the results are telling me otherwise. And I believe the results. Why? What am I missing? Why does traditional parenting not work, and why isn't therapy helping? And in the answering of those questions, I leaned in to understanding trauma. And what I learned is that there was a lot of science that had come out in the late 90s. Now, mind you, at this point, we're going back like 10 years, right? So even more knowledge has come out since the time at which I was initially exploring this. But long story short, in the late 90s, there were studies done by Stanford University in which ACE studies, adverse childhood effect, those studies were taking place and learned that early childhood trauma had a lot of consequences over a long course of time. And simultaneous to that, studies were being done with Holocaust survivors, a family that has been born off of Holocaust survivors. And we had in 2001, the World Trade Center, which was a hugely traumatic event. And so trauma studies were being done at an exponential rate using much more refined equipment and learning to develop the studies, right? And so the things that they were finding was, oh my word, metabolic changes have taken place in people who have trauma wounds. People who have trauma that's been imparted into who they are, they function different and their DNA is actually changed. The way in which their DNA is received by their body, biophysiological changes have taken place. And so from that, they said, okay, what do we do? How are we going to deal with this? And so a series of, we need to do body-brain integration in order to start to reset that metabolic shift, get the body to digest out the fight or flight chemicals, right? And so these things are happening. They're learning about this. They're applying it to adults. It's great information. And yet, you get a child that's rebellious, stuck in fight or flight, that has no trust, no reason to believe that permanent families actually are a thing for them, they feel like a baby thrown out with the bathwater. How do we get a child to embrace the things necessary that adults are doing to overcome PTSD, to overcome OCD that's onset because of trauma wounds, that's overcome the insomnia, to overcome the inflammatory diseases, right? All of the consequences and side effects, we're getting adults to understand body-brain integration. We're getting adults to understand the power of meditation, the power of letting go of thoughts that are not positive, and making shifts into a space of healing. But we can't get kids to do that. Let's be real. I can't get this kid to brush her teeth, let alone do body-brain integration, let alone do pressure point work, let alone, right? Fill in the blank. So from there, I looked into what already exists. And the reality is there's not much. Trauma-informed care in the world of adolescent mental health and behavioral health care, people are starting to understand trauma-informed care, but what methods do they use to actually impart results on kids? Yeah, ask your therapist that. What are you doing to get the metabolic change, to get the biophysiological stuff back? And the answer is, and therefore, right? And so what I did is I developed tools and systems that do exactly that. And the absolute only way to be able to get kids to be able to make that metabolic change is to surround them with that change within their home environment. So it starts from the top down. Parents have to understand the change. Then they need to understand the systems and how to implement them in order that the child is forced into figuring out how to find neutral. Because the reality is, it's like taking away something from an addict, right? The only body state they know is this elevated state, and we're going to require them to let go of that and find something else. There needs to be a payoff in finding that. And at a certain point, they're going to be like, oh, right? Like, I am missing these chemicals, and try and redrive themselves back into it, sabotaging the environment. So, whole family care. Trauma-informed whole family care for kids that are stuck in fight or flight, that are highly polarized. And is therapy helpful? Yes, it can be. If the therapist isn't re-traumatizing them by forcing recall, that the child's not equipped to be able to stay in neutral through the recall. Recalling can actually create new traumas. And so we don't want to go there unless the person really knows what they're doing and knows how to close that out. That is not me. Not doing it, right? And challenging perception, challenging the ways in which the world has shifted their perspective, and getting them to put on those new glasses takes time. So if you're doing that without resetting the metabolic shifts and getting the whole house to and calm down, then the child's not in neutral through therapeutic process. And so how much can really be achieved when a child's in fight or flight and their prefrontal cortex, their thinking brain, is not firing during therapy? And so the results that we get out of therapy alone for these kids, I don't have to tell you. I don't have to tell you. And it doesn't minimize the value of therapy. I see a therapist to process everything that I continue to go through, right? Therapy has great value. I have so much respect for therapists. Good, quality, informed therapists. Love it. And I love it for my children that are teenagers, young adults. So there's value. I'm just saying that the results of that are over a course of time, and a lot of people and a lot of adoptive families that I work with, they don't have the time. They don't, because it's so volatile right here and right now that 2 years from now, you're worried that your child's going to be on the street, a runaway, associating with all the bad things that we don't even want to talk about, right? So we need results today. Therapy isn't results today. Trauma-informed whole family care, results today. So when I was doing it as a private practice, my contracts were 3 to 4 months max for length. And so the idea is intense reboot at the house, put the systems in place, calm it down. Then therapy can make some real traction, right? That's why therapy has a limited result and a limited reach with our kids. And so, sorry. So for me, the suggestion would be, if therapy is not getting you the results that you need for your children, whole family care is where it needs to go. And then therapy can come alongside that to help challenge the perspectives and impart healing into your child through actual therapeutic DBT, CBT, those kinds of things. I hope that that's helpful. I hope that you see a little differently as to what's going on inside of your kiddos, and that you become a part of that solution, not just through love and consistency, but through finding out how to shift yourself and your kids back into neutral. That's what I do for a living. I love it. Absolutely love it. Please check out my other videos. Hop onto thetraumamama.com for testimonials. Follow me on Facebook because there's tons of informational posts that I do almost on a daily basis to help educate families about the importance of metabolically going back into those spaces where our bodies best function. And I know that for me, even being a mom to these high trauma kind of kiddos, it took me to spaces I was not proud of. So for me to find my neutral again and not give my power away to kids that are struggling, it took work and it took systems. And that's what I do. I take the chaos that's in hearts and homes, adoptive hearts and homes, and I exchange that for peace. And when I say that, sounds a little cliche, but the reality is it's real. It's what I do. And so reach out. I'd love to do a free strategy call with you and talk about what it would look like in your family, what struggles your family is enduring right now, and see if we can't come together to help you find neutral and get back to enjoying being a family. God bless you. Thank you for your time.